For many people in the West, taking off one's clothes in front of strangers is already a significant psychological barrier. Communal bathing, sharing the same space, completely uncovered, is almost unimaginable. It is easily associated with a violation of privacy or a deeply instinctive sense of shame. Yet in Japan, this happens every day, calmly and entirely naturally. In public bathhouses, hot springs such as Onsen or Sento, Japanese people bathe together with strangers regardless of familiarity, age, or status. There are no scrutinizing glances, no prolonged embarrassment. People enter the hot water, sit beside one another, relax, and then leave, as if it were simply an ordinary part of daily life. So what creates such a profound difference between East and West? Why is the human body associated with shame in one place, but not in another? Are Japanese people truly more comfortable, or do they view the body and privacy in a fundamentally different way? The answer does not lie in boldness or conservatism, but in cultural foundations. In Japan, bathing is not only about cleansing the body, but also about washing away fatigue and blending into a shared rhythm of life. A naked body in a bathing space does not signify display, but a return to the most equal state of being human, without status, without social roles. In this video, we will explore why Japanese people can bathe together with strangers without feeling ashamed, and what this reveals about how a culture understands the body, community, and personal boundaries. To understand why communal bathing in Japan does not carry meanings of exhibitionism or sexuality, one must temporarily set aside familiar cultural reflexes and examine the issue through the way Japanese society defines the body in public space. Here, nudity does not equate to sensuality, but simply represents the most natural state of being human. First, in Japanese culture, the body is not burdened with excessive symbolic meaning as it is in many other societies. It is not automatically associated with desire or moral judgment. When entering a public bath, the body is seen as an ordinary biological reality, something everyone has, and something fundamentally similar across individuals. For this reason, being unclothed in a bathing space does not convey a message of display, but is merely a necessary condition for cleansing and relaxation. Second, bathing spaces in Japan are clearly defined by function. Onsen and Sento are not places for social interaction in the conversational sense, and certainly not spaces for self-expression. They are environments meant for rest and quiet, governed by strict unspoken rules. No staring, no commenting, no drawing attention. When everyone adheres to the same behavioral norms, the naked body becomes invisible in terms of meaning, no longer the focus of attention. Another important factor is the clear separation between the body and sexuality in Japanese cultural life. Sexuality, when present, is situated within specific contexts with clearly defined boundaries. Public bathhouses do not belong to those contexts. As a result, the same image of the body can carry entirely different meanings depending on the space in which it appears. This demonstrates that meaning does not reside in the body itself, but in the social conventions that define the space. Communal bathing is also closely tied to a sense of community. Upon entering the bath, social distinctions, occupation, status, age, are temporarily set aside. The naked body places everyone on equal footing. No one is showing off because there is nothing to show. No one is judging because there is no standard by which to compare. This normalization effectively dissolves unnecessary associations. Moreover, the practice of communal bathing is deeply ingrained in Japanese life from an early age. Children grow up bathing with family members or in public spaces, and therefore do not develop an intense sense of shame attached to the body. When something is treated as normal from childhood, it is unlikely to acquire distorted meanings later in life. Ultimately, communal bathing in Japan is neither indifferent nor excessively liberal. Rather, it is the product of a cultural system that emphasizes appropriateness, the right thing, in the right context. When the body is placed in a suitable space and viewed through a neutral lens, it returns to its proper position, a natural part of being human, neither something that must be hidden nor something that demands attention. To understand why Japanese society does not associate the human body with moral shame, it is necessary to examine how shame itself is formed at its roots. In Japan, shame does not arise primarily from the body, but from behavior that disrupts social order. This creates a profound difference from many Western cultures. In Japanese thinking, the body is first and foremost a natural reality. It is born, it ages, it grows tired, and it requires care. The body itself is not moral in nature. It is neither good nor bad. Morality emerges only when a person acts in ways that cause inconvenience, intrusion, or discomfort to others. Therefore, a naked body within a clearly socially defined space, such as a public bath, is not considered wrong or shameful. By contrast, in many Western societies, particularly those shaped by religious traditions and individual-centered moral frameworks, the body is often closely linked to ideas of desire and moral control. As a result, exposing the body can easily be interpreted as crossing boundaries of privacy or morality. Shame arises not only from actions, but from the physical state of the body itself. This represents a fundamental difference in how the human being is positioned within culture. Another important element in Japanese culture is contextual thinking. Japanese society is highly sensitive to whether something is in the right place. The same action, when placed in a different context, can carry an entirely different meaning. A naked body in a bathhouse is appropriate. A naked body in other public spaces is not. Shame is not attached to form, but to being out of context. When everyone adheres to the same shared conventions, the feeling of shame naturally disappears. In addition, Japanese society places strong emphasis on collective harmony. Shame arises when an individual stands out in a way that disrupts this shared balance. In the bath, everyone is the same, no one stands out, and no one seeks attention. This uniformity strips the body of individual distinction, and with it, the basis for moral judgment. Child-rearing practices also play a crucial role. Japanese children are exposed early to communal bathing within families or communities, and therefore do not develop psychological tension around the body. When the body is not taught as something that must be hidden at all costs, it does not become a source of shame. Instead, children are taught to pay attention to attitude, etiquette, and how they behave toward others. If we make a gentle comparison with the West, we can see the different approaches. One treats the body as a domain requiring strict moral control, while the other treats the body as morally neutral and locates ethics in social behavior. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong. They reflect different histories, religious influences, and social structures. Ultimately, the fact that Japanese culture does not link the body to moral shame does not mean it is relaxed or permissive. On the contrary, it is often very strict about boundary violations. The difference is that those boundaries are not drawn around the body itself, but around whether one respects shared space and other people. It is precisely this placement of boundaries that creates a cultural mindset that is distinct, yet coherent and internally consistent. Communal bathing in Japan is not a strange custom that emerged randomly, but rather the natural outcome of everyday life in a society that, from a very early stage, developed around water, cleanliness, and community. When we look back at Japan's past, we can see that communal bathing was once almost self-evident, closely tied to living conditions and to the way daily life was organized. In traditional Japanese society, houses were often small, built of wood, and not every family had the means to heat water privately. Hot water was a precious resource, especially in winter. Sharing a large bath within the family or the village was therefore practical and economical. Solution: communal bathing did not carry complex social or symbolic meanings. It was simply the most efficient way to keep the body clean. Public bathhouses, the predecessors of today's Sento, gradually appeared in densely populated neighborhoods. They were not only places for washing, but an integral part of everyday rhythm. After a long day of hard labor, people went to the bathhouse to wash away dirt, sweat, and fatigue. The atmosphere was calm and familiar, more like a shared living space than a strictly private one. Another important factor was the influence of indigenous beliefs. In traditional Japanese thought, particularly under the influence of Sento, cleanliness carries spiritual significance. Bathing is not only about cleaning the body, but about becoming pure in order to live in harmony with nature and the community. The body, therefore, was not viewed with suspicion or moral judgment, but as something that needed regular care and cleansing. In rural life of the past, communal bathing felt even more natural. People worked in the fields, in the mountains, exposed to rain and wind, and ended the long day by bathing together in hot water. There was no clear distinction between private and communal in the modern sense. Communities were small, people knew one another well, and bathing together did not change how they perceived or judged each other. Over time, this habit was passed down from generation to generation. Children grew up seeing adults bathe together as something normal, and thus did not develop feelings of shame or psychological tension associated with it. Communal bathing became part of a shared collective memory associated with relaxation, warmth, and social connection, rather than with personal exposure. As Japanese society modernized, housing changed and privacy became more highly valued. But the practice of communal bathing did not disappear. It was preserved as a cultural space where people could temporarily set aside their social roles and return to a more simple, fundamental state of being. And it is precisely this very practical, everyday origin that has allowed communal bathing in Japan to endure, not as something exotic or unusual, but as a natural part of the history of human daily life. At first glance, public bathhouses in Japan may appear free and unrestrained, but in reality, they operate according to a very strict system of unspoken rules. It is precisely these rules, never stated outright, that keep the shared bathing space orderly, calm, and comfortable for everyone. Once these rules are understood, it becomes clear why communal bathing can take place naturally without creating discomfort or a sense of violated privacy. The most important rule is to wash thoroughly before entering the shared bath. The soaking pool is not a place to clean the body, but a place to immerse oneself and relax. Each person is responsible for ensuring their body is clean before stepping in. Because the hot water is a shared resource, this is not merely a matter of hygiene, but a clear expression of communal awareness. Other people as comfort depends directly on one's own behavior. Next is the role concerning attitude and gaze. In the bathhouse, no one stares at others, makes judgments, or offers commentary. Eyes are usually directed downward or unfocused, just enough to move and function normally. Maintaining a neutral gaze helps make the naked body socially invisible, thereby eliminating the feeling of being watched or evaluated. Quietness is also an important norm. Japanese people do not regard the bathhouse as a place for loud conversation or emotional display. If people talk at all, voices are kept very low and usually only among acquaintances. This space is understood as one of rest for both body and mind, so maintaining tranquility is observed instinctively, without the need for reminders. In addition, everyone takes care not to disturb others through their actions. No splashing water, no occupying space for too long, no blocking pathways. These rules are not written down, yet everyone understands that the bathhouse is a shared space, and comfort exists only when individuals know how to limit themselves. One noteworthy point is that these rules are rarely enforced through direct verbal correction. Instead, they are maintained through glances, silence, and the internal sense of I am doing something wrong. This reflects a defining feature of Japanese culture. Order arises not from coercion, but from self-regulation in order to harmonize with the group. Thanks to this system of unspoken rules, public bathhouses in Japan do not become places of awkwardness, but spaces of shared calm. They demonstrate that communal bathing is not an issue of the body, but an issue of awareness and conduct. When looking back at the entire story of communal bathing in Japan, what lingers is not the image of naked bodies, but the way a society perceives human beings in their most natural state. There, the body is neither elevated into a symbol for display, nor reduced to an object of shame or moral judgment. It is simply the body something everyone has, and something that ultimately makes everyone the same once clothing is removed. The difference lies in how culture defines boundaries. For Japanese society, boundaries are not drawn at whether the body is covered or uncovered, but at attitude, the gaze, behavior, and respect for shared space. It is precisely these unspoken rules and this sense of communal awareness that allow communal bathing to exist as an ordinary daily practice, without the need to justify it through grand concepts. When placed alongside other societies, especially the modern West, a different approach becomes visible. There, the body is often closely tied to personal identity, privacy, and moral norms. Covering the body becomes a protective boundary, while exposure is easily interpreted as crossing a line. This is not because one society is right and another is wrong, but because each culture constructs its value system differently, shaped by its own history, religion, and social structure. Understanding this helps us view communal bathing in Japan not with curiosity mixed with judgment, but with clear-eyed observation. It is neither a model that must be followed, nor a custom that needs to be opposed. It is simply an example showing that feelings of shame or naturalness are not inherent in the human body, but are formed through the ways societies teach us to see ourselves and to see others. And once we recognize that, perhaps the more meaningful question is no longer why can Japanese people bathe together without feeling shame, but rather, which cultural norms in our own society are shaping our sense of shame or our sense of freedom.